Welcome to the Enabling Buying Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Kirch, and I'm grateful you're here. Enabling Buying is brought to you by Collavia.com, your all-in-one sales enablement platform. I'm not just the host of the show, I'm also a proud member of the Collavia Board of Directors and an active user of the platform, which was built around the methodology of enabling buying in a world of selling. Now, this show is meant to help CEOs, sales leaders, and anyone out there selling find a better way to drive impact in today's busy marketplace. Today, we've got a great guest, Carol Eversen of Chief Outsiders. She's an area managing partner, CMO, and CRO, with a vast experience in helping companies drive success. Chief Outsiders is the nation's leading executive as a service firm, helping CEOs and their organizations identify fractional marketing and sales executives they need to accelerate growth. As a high-impact revenue leader, Carol defines executive revenue growth strategies for companies seeking to take their performance to the next level. I'm excited for today's conversation. I know Carol personally, and she blends combination of sales and marketing, functional leadership skills. All of this formed in blue chip companies with an action-oriented and really pragmatic mindset, developed through, I would say, startups and mid-market experiences and other areas of business. You're in for a treat. This is going to be an action-packed episode. Join me in welcoming Carol Eversen to the Enabling Buying Podcast. Welcome to the Enabling Buying Podcast. I'm Paul Kirch, and I'm here with a special guest, Carol Eversen. Carol, so great to see you. You and I actually got to know each other because we both serve on a board for Collavia, and Collavia is the company that actually help sponsor and develop this podcast. Charles Bernard, who's the CEO, came up with this concept. I don't think he coined it, but it's something he's really leveraged throughout his career. And he and I are very much aligned on this, enabling buying in a world of selling. And that's where the Enabling Buying podcast came from. You know, Collavia is it's an all-in-one sales enablement platform. It's designed to help with coaching, custom sales playbooks, AI-powered coaching, all these great things. And you and I have both been very much involved in how they're promoting and developing. But as you and I have got to know each other, one thing that I've learned is that you've got a lot of experience in different areas of business, like branding. And one thing that you've really been a leader on, and is you're part of an AI search task force. AI is totally reshaping revenue generation, how it's developed, the demand, sales readiness, and companies seem to be embracing it at warp speed. However, not necessarily everybody's on the same page. But one area that I think you and I both see changing dramatically is how search is being managed, and search that drives sales leads and opportunities. SEO is just absolutely changing today. Can we dive in and talk a little bit about what you've learned through the search task force and some of the other things that you're working on?
Absolutely. I'd love to do that. Do you want me to just hop right in?
Yeah, please. I mean, this is your domain. So tell me what you're seeing out there and what's really driving the need for change right now.
Well, I think a lot of companies don't understand the fact that buyers are going to the LLMs or to ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, whatever their favorite model is. And they're getting answers that guide them in terms of their shortlist. So what's happening is the shortlist is being set way up at the top of the funnel in terms of whether or not they're going to talk to a company. And that's coming because the chat GPTs of the world have the ability to gather and cite information and mentions in a way that you can't get from a Google search. The interesting thing is some people say SEO is dead. And I've seen that proclaimed all over the place. It's not true. It's just changed. Yeah. It's the foundation now. It's not enough. You still have to have a good site. You still have to have schema markup. You still have to have fast page speed. All of those basics that go into SEO are key. But now there's this whole layer on top of it.
I'd argue that it's more critical now than ever, but standalone SEO, I think, is where it's absolutely getting decimated. Search on Google, and there's a lot of challenges. But, some of the changes like the WebMCP protocols that are coming out that are going to deeply impact websites in June, and some of the other things with AI search. And like you mentioned, the ChatGPT and LLM integration into websites, I think people are missing the mark. They might have a bot, but that doesn't mean that they're ready for the change. So where do you see the biggest impact hitting these companies?
Well, the biggest impact is leads that are coming in and the level of qualification of the leads. So, for example, there are some stats: 94% of B2B buyers use AI before they reach out. That's new. 58% of the searches in B2B end up with an AI overview. So, with numbers like that, people are gravitating toward the companies that are either cited or mentioned. So the key becomes, how do I get cited or mentioned? Because it's definitely reducing the results in terms of the impact of organic search or even paid search now has basically really deteriorated in terms of the volumes of leads that are being delivered. In fact, as a result, the cost of a paid click has gone way up. So you put those pieces together, the marketing team needs to be partnering with sales, and the marketing team really needs to be focused on influencing the engines, which we can talk about in a minute. There are things that can be done. The sales team needs to be ready at a different level than sales has been ready before, because the leads that are coming in, these people have researched the companies, they've formed opinions, they've interrogated their various chatbots, and they are in a position to ask questions at a different level. So maybe the SDRs or BDRs need to be trained differently and be able to elevate the conversation that they're having, because the client is coming in much more informed.
Well, they're coming in more informed, and I think they're also coming in a little bit more jaded. I look at what's happening in the marketplace. There's so much saturation, and automation is great. The idea that we can, save time, automate processes, but I think there's a lot of lazy approaches that are creating a lot of bad messaging, a lot of bad videos, a lot of bad content that's alienating buyers, because it's like like, for example, if I think about LinkedIn specifically, I can go on LinkedIn in my inbox. Now I have a huge following on LinkedIn. I don't say that to brag, but I say that because my inbox is filled with sales messages every day, and they're pitches.
Mm,
Instantly, the
right.
first time, hey, can I help you with this? No, you don't even know me. And I think buyers are becoming super hypersensitive to messaging. Now, that doesn't mean messaging isn't important, right? So let's talk about the messaging piece, because it all comes back to, you mentioned SEO is not dead. I agree. But, another area that they said was dead was blogging. Blogging is so important today
Yeah.
because of the SEO aspect. So let's talk about content generation and how this is all tying in.
Yeah, it's definitely changed, and yet it's back to the basics, the same as enabling buyers in a world of selling. It's back to the basics, and the basics are: your reputation matters, sentiment about your brand reputation matters, PR actually matters now, because if you have to understand where these engines go to get
Yeah.
content, and if you understand where they go to get content, as a team, as a marketing team setting the process up for sales, you can influence that. So let's think about what some of those things are. First is review sites. It depends on the type of product you have. For example, if you're a consultant and you're consulting to CEOs, Reddit's not likely to be the source that CEOs would have gone to, nor the source where the information is. If you're a SaaS product, or if you're certain types of consumer products, then yeah, definitely you would go to Reddit. Reddit's always cited as like the number one engine that the LLMs go to, but it's situational dependent.
Yeah.
So there aren't tricks like there used to be in SEO. You can do backlinks. There were like little rules, and as the engines changed, you would adapt to the little rules. This is different. This is all about, you need to have a presence that really explains who you are, and that explains why people should be excited about working with you. And you need to ensure that it's in the places that are legitimate sources of authority. So it might be review sites, it might be LinkedIn profiles, not the fake LinkedIn like messages that people send, or the program messages like you were talking about, but your profile, what it says about you,
Yeah.
it needs to be current, it needs to be good, and it needs to cover the things that you want to be discovered for, as an example.
Yeah, and I think that the other challenge is everyone needs to stay above or ahead of what's happening all the time, and that's the hard thing. And that doesn't mean chasing, oh, today I'm using Claude, today I'm using ChatGPT and all these things. I'm talking about, like, from the content generation. You mentioned Reddit. So one time,
Mhm.
Medium was belle of the ball. You had to be on Medium. Now, Medium is just absolutely saturated with a lot of stuff that I don't think is relevant in helping businesses. And so it's no longer as pertinent. LinkedIn used to be a great place to post articles, LinkedIn newsletter, but LinkedIn no longer indexes that content. So it used to be you could post an article on LinkedIn and you'd get some actual Google ranking from it. So it's ever changing. So how does one stay ahead of some of this? I mean, do you have some advice or ways that people can always kind of be in staying up on what's working?
Yeah, I do. I think the most important thing is to try to think like the buyer. And if you think like the buyer and you understand what's important to them, I mean, it's basic. Have content that's based on what they are looking for, what they want to understand. Have it available to be picked up in the engines from your website. So you need to make sure whatever the processes of the day are, and as website methodologies change and as the engines change, that will adapt. But it's pretty basic SEO again in terms of picking it up. Blogs make sense. Definitely the reputation makes sense. So you have to make sure that you're dealing with authoritative sources that are way outside of your site. So take care of your site. But now, what else is out there that where you really need to be present? You need to be telling your story, and the story needs to be based on what the credibility and credentials of the company are. It's the games are gone. It's
Yeah.
basic. Back to real basics. I have legitimate value. Here are my case studies. Here are my examples. Here are the quotes from my clients that are talking about how fabulous we are. And then you also have to have on top of that protective content. And I'll give you an example of that. I had a client, and that client had a competitor that had set up a page with every single one of their competitors, comparing that company to them. And so they had a page for head to head. And on those pages, they had quotes of people talking about why they disliked their competitor and why they loved this company. And they actually did this head to head like hit job on their competition, and they had done it for every single one of their competitors. And lo and behold, I was doing this, and the way I found it was I was doing just some work on my client, and it was like, oh my gosh, where did this come from? And when you clicked in on the sources, you realize they're picking up this head to head comparison from this competition. I am not advocating that because I think that's horrific. And that's the type of thing you were talking about that will ultimately come back to bite you. But if you don't know that, you haven't built your own truth. And so the truth in the eyes of the engines are what that competitor site said, because it had a really great head-to-head comparison. So you could see these quotes about how this company is better than that because, and it was all based on this competitor site. It's crazy.
It's a little scary, but it may have been the most strategic SEO strategy ever. So
I know. I know. And the key is like know that, have your rebuttal content strategy.
yeah,
By the way, the other big thing you need to do with content now is you have to create it with them in mind, the way that the content is going to be searched.
yeah.
In the past, Google was what, 2 or 3 words. The average a couple of months ago was a 23-word prompt. I bet money that the average prompt is like 1.25, 1.5 times that at this point,
Oh yeah.
because this stuff is growing so exponentially. So you have to figure out, how do I reverse engineer prompts so that I can create content around the likely prompts? It's not like keyword research
Yeah.
anymore. It's not like there's a set of keywords, you know what they are, you go out and you can get your stats. You have to actually go through a process of thinking about what you're trying to communicate, having personas, having topics, formulating questions, trialing it, seeing what the answers are. And there's a process you can go through, and you work your way into a list of 15 to 20 prompts. And then you put out through different tools, you can look and see, oh, my share of that is this, and here's who's showing up, and here's what they're saying, and here's what I'm saying. And that can help you adjust so that you get yourself to the point that you're controlling your sentiment and you are showing up where the buyer is looking. And that's really key.
It is. And we started talking about enabling buying, then we talked about lead generation, and then SEO. But it all ties back to one common theme, and that's the idea that all buying decisions, whether you want to believe it or not, salespeople are often out there selling to the logical brain, they're selling features and benefits, but people are buying from an emotional perspective. What's the
Mhm.
fear? What's the challenges they're facing? What are they trying to solve? Maybe even what are they excited about? What's going well in their business and how are they trying to scale? It all comes back to learning to sell to the emotional aspect. And that's where, the content creation comes in. But you also mentioned something really key there, and that's the way search is changing. And it all kind of ties back to this idea that we need to be thinking about what is a buyer really wanting. And when we're internally talking about things in our companies, we get excited about what we built and we're like, oh my gosh, this is going to solve so many problems. And we start to assume what those problems are. But unless we really put ourselves in that empathetic, seat of the buyer, we don't necessarily know what's driving their motives. Are there some things you see potentially helping clients and reach that better? CRMs, slide decks, inboxes. Sales teams don't need more scattered tools. They need alignment. Collavia brings your sales playbook, AI coaching, training, and goals together in one platform for consultative B2B teams looking to close more deals with less confusion and greater consistency. Collavia, enabling buying in a world of selling. Visit Collavia.com. I mean, are there things in AI that are helping us tap into emotion, even though AI is not necessarily a tool built around the idea of emotion? But are there things we can do to kind of reach that?
I think there are a couple of things that you can do. One is to just understand that what are the factors that matter. And before we get into like the emotions of the solution, I think the other thing to think about is the emotion of trust.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring that up is that I do business development at times at Chief Outsiders. And when I get a Chat GPT lead, I'm like score because I know and it's proven to me because we're doing a pretty good job with ChatGPT. It's been proven to me that that person coming in from that channel is much more inclined to believe what we're communicating because they've done more homework. So I'll start with trust as a factor. Just being present in the right manner with the right sentiment can make a difference. But if you move to the solutions, and the emotions around the solutions, there are so many things that you can do. Like, for example, if you're having people work on copy using AI, it's so important to make sure that your prompt is set up to include your brand guidelines. And if your brand guidelines don't talk about your personality, then you need to think about what is the personality that I want to engender. What do I want someone that I'm speaking to feel about my company? Do I want them to feel that we're hip and cool and we're like the cool kids on the block that really know their stuff, or do I want them to feel that we're serious and we care? And if you can separate and isolate what your brand stands for, get that into the prompts. Make sure that that's part of what's happening. Don't just get the facts and only the facts out of the tool. And it will help. You have to be careful. You also have to give it guidance. Like if you say to an AI tool, write this, it will take so many liberties if you don't frame it properly. And the framing has to be, don't make things up. If you don't want it to be elaborate and wordy, tell it. Don't be that. The more you can tell it about what works in your world with your buyer, assuming the better off you'll be. And the real question is, do you know?
I was talking to somebody recently that they have always successfully built their business through online search. They have crushed it. They kind of dominated an area of specialization, but it's changed. And this last year was the first year that they really struggled to draw in leads that way. And this year it's even worse. But talking to them, I really think they kind of missed the mark on what's happening and where their impact is really changing. So I guess one of the questions I'd like to ask is, where are you seeing companies blaming the wrong thing right now? Do you see that there's some maybe misguided concepts out there?
I do, and I think it's starting to turn a little bit. I think people are starting to realize they're in a new world. But 3, 4 months ago, the blame was tariffs, and the blame was wars, and the blame was what you choose, whatever the thing was that was the hot topic, and people were actually thinking it was this bigger, broader problem, and not connecting. And certainly, there's an impact of those in certain industries for sure. I'm not debating that, but or denying that. But in reality, this was a trend. And if you go back and look at, like I think it was like March or April of last year when things really kicked in and it was really making a difference, you can just see the exponential change in traffic. So
Yeah.
slowly people are coming around to this, but I don't know that they're totally bought in to the fact that they have a lot less control over what the engines think about them and what the engines communicate to the buyer. And ultimately, the buyer is putting more emphasis on the AI outcome than necessarily on the website of the client. And yes, the website still needs to be there. Yes, it needs to have the truth of their business, both the feature functionality and the benefits, as well as like the personality of the company and the sentiment and all of the proof points that matter, use cases,
Yeah.
quotes, testimonials, all of that. But yeah, I think I think that they're intellectually hearing it. They haven't quite transitioned to what do I do about it?
Yeah, and I also think that there's a lot of misunderstanding of where the opportunity lies, and I think that there are some people that are at major risk right now because we're kind of in the early stages of AI. A couple years in, things have changed dramatically, but they're going to change even more. But I look back to when the internet started. There was a lot of. I was in the market research industry at the time, and they promised that online surveys could do anything, video and all these things. But at the time, it couldn't, and we didn't have the audience to target because we didn't have panels built at that time that were of any magnitude. That all changed. So things caught up. But I think with AI, things are going to change very quickly. And I think there are people at risk out there. What, I guess, are there some mistakes you see companies making right now that they maybe regret in a year or two?
Yes. I'll give an example of one. It's e-commerce, for example. I was doing some voice of customer work for a client, and I was speaking with retail companies, and many of those companies, many of them said, yeah, I'm keeping my, and I think they felt like they had to say it. I'm keeping my eye on AI right now, but it's not really a factor for us. And then other people were AI obsessed. Stay on top of it because I don't want to make the mistake of not understanding how quickly this is changing and not get ahead of it. So you have people like that, and then you have other people who are just, for the most part, saying, "Well, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'll watch it, but I'm not too worried about it."
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's the focus in some companies is on the wrong thing. Their focus is on how can AI help automate everything. But I think right now it's critical to be focusing on, if we're talking about the sales process, the marketing engine behind it that's driving those leads. Because I think it's going to be harder and harder to attract attention organically, just cold calling. I mean, cold calling is always going to work in some capacity, but it's getting harder and harder. And I think that the opportunity is great for us. So I really want to thank you for being here today, and I want to close this out with a question that I think you are greatly qualified to answer, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say. But are there some things from a positive standpoint, 2 or 3 things you think that companies should be doing right now? Either from the CEO down or from the sales leader down. Are there 2 or 3 things that they should be focusing on? And maybe we close it with an area where maybe they shouldn't be wasting their time. So, what are 2 or 3 areas where they should be focusing today?
Well, the first thing I would do is separate to the point you just made, efficiency versus effectiveness. Yes, having engagements that are focused on effect or efficiency, but absolutely have some initiatives that are based on effectiveness and effectiveness in the market. So what does that mean? An example for that, for example, might be using AI to pull together a series of conversations that a salesperson's had combine all those together, pull out the trends, hand that over to the coach or the sales manager, and let the sales manager have a much more informed conversation with the salesperson because they have all of that insight. There are so many types of different flavors of that help make that salesperson more effective. And there will be an efficiency aspect to it because
Yeah.
the sales manager doesn't have to read transcripts or all of that. But the key that you're really trying to get to is not look how much time I saved. That's helpful. It's not bad, but look how much better this person is at closing deals. So that to me is the top priority, and the thing that as a CEO and say a CRO should worry about would be that. And I think the second is insight. What are the insights that a salesperson has for a client? What type of information have they pulled together that's solid information before they have their first conversation, before their first discovery call? Our company, I'm able to just pull a profile immediately. Takes me 2 seconds. It's built into our platform for us. And so I'm in a position to be able to say, oh, these are the things that really matter in a company like this. This is going to inform my line of questioning. I would have gotten there before. It would have taken me more time. I probably didn't. Don't tell anyone. I probably didn't do it all the time. But like now, I have no excuse but to do it because I can do it so easily and show up on a call with so much more insight and ask better questions, which is another flavor of efficiency or effectiveness. So to me, those are
Yeah.
the ways that we focus is how do I make things better, not just how do I make things cheaper.
I mean, I look back to I used to manage a West Coast sales territory, and I used to have to print off MapQuest maps to get everywhere. And in LA, if you get stuck in traffic, you got to have alternative routes. So you'd have stacks of maps. Then I got GPS, and then, but I look at today from a sales perspective. Even though I think the sales landscape is hard right now from a research and preparation and support perspective. I mean, my God, there's so many tools out there that just are changing the game. So as we close this out, I look at the methodology behind Collavia, enabling buying in a world of selling, and I think everything you talked about is really driven towards truly enabling buying. I'm curious from your perspective, just as a final topic here, marketing and sales in a lot of organizations, especially large organizations, they should be more aligned than they are. Often they're fighting against each other. I think that's all going to change with the AI model because I think it has to.
Mhm.
Any thoughts on that and anything companies can do to start moving sales and marketing closer together?
Yeah, there's a lot that companies can do, and it starts at the top. Um, I worked for a company once, and my CEO was a former NFL linebacker. And when I walked into the job the first day, it was me and the head of sales, and he just pulled us in and spoke very expressively and said, I don't ever want you to talk to her about her leads. You work them. I don't ever want you to complain about him. Go away. If you come back as a team. Do not come back one on one, throwing the other one under the bus. I really don't care. Here are your goals. Go. And he was about 6'8" and I'm 5'1", so that was kind of intimidating. But we did that, and he and I became best friends. And
Oh, wow.
to this day, like we still stay in touch. We haven't worked together in 15 years, but we stay in touch. And we walked away saying, well, we're going to work together. And then it became easy. You set common metrics. There are new metrics now. Marketing has to get past some of the, like leads and, even MQLs. Like you have to have skin in the game for sales. You have to feel that your job is to help the sales team, no matter what, achieve those revenue goals. And then the sales organization needs to not have shadow reports, but you both pull data from the same source. And if you do it that way, it is always successful. But it starts with the CEO not letting them have seams that they work with the CEO.
Carol, thank you so much for being here today. This was a great conversation. I really do see so many great opportunities related to AI, and I think the focus in a lot of organizations is in the wrong place. But you've given some great insights I think can help bring us to a better place where we can drive better qualified leads and really impact companies in a very positive way. I thank you for being here today. Is there any information you'd like to give as far as like how somebody can reach you or connect with you directly?
Sure. It's Carol Eversen, Eversen, and I'm at ceverson at chiefoutsiders.com or 908-419-7622.
Well, Carol, thank you so much for being here today, and I hope you have an amazing afternoon.
You too, Paul. Thank you.